then you don't follow it.
And then I kind of follow it, yeah, right. So, nothing this week, except I have a passage, for I know the plans I have for you. I've preached on that passage before. And it's 8:33 in your, if you want to look it up, if you don't believe me. But there it is. And I just want to tell some stories today, a little bit different, but based on that text. I know I have the plans for you. And in that text, he doesn't say, and I know I have the plans for you, and here they are, in detail. Because what would happen, right? Well, that's a pretty good plan, Lord, but here's a few improvements we can make. There's like 800 improvements for the first 2 weeks. You know, I mean, that's how we are. But the Lord says, I know, and he's telling this to the people of Israel who are really in a bad place. This is the prophet Jeremiah talking to them. And it's, if you know that story at all, and I'm not going into it, it's really awful. But that's the word from the Lord that comes to Jeremiah the prophet, and he says this, for I know the plans I have for you. You know, they're plans for a future. They're plans not for evil, but for good. You know, for hope in the future. Wow, that's great. So, some stories about that. I look back over my years in ministry, and it goes back 35 years. And this El Faro trip, what an interesting trip. What a mind-blowing trip this was for me, really. In all the years of ministry, I'm thinking new thoughts about how the Lord works. And not different theology, but just new ways to think about how the Lord uses you. And sometimes it feels like how the Lord abuses you, but it's, in the moment, it feels that way, but it's not about that at all. It's about God's purposes and things. So, 30-some years ago, I'm at Cook County Hospital, and I meet a woman who is a volunteer there named Audrey Ephraim. She's got like 9 kids and lives in Evergreen Park, and she comes down to Cook County Hospital as a volunteer to share Christ to patients at Cook County Hospital. She's from Maranatha Chapel. And Maranatha Chapel was a church that was supporting me in my ministry. Went over them and said, this is what I'm doing this at Cook County Hospital, and they said, oh, we'll support you. Like, cool, all right. So they were one of my supporting churches, and I met Audrey, and what a woman. Just one of those people that you just immediately are drawn to because she loves the Lord, and she's just fully dedicated to serving the Lord in her life. And the more I would talk with her, and she would tell me about her family and about her husband and about things they were involved in, and it's really an amazing family. Her husband was one of the people who got together and founded Channel 38, which was kind of Christian TV in Chicago for a long time. He's a visionary kind of guy. They were mentors, and evidently mentored their children as well. But Audrey was just this wonderful Christian woman, and eventually I moved from that ministry, became a chaplain at Christ Hospital, and kept up with her for various ways, and I would find out things about her. She had a stroke, and then eventually she died, and I was thinking, even before she died and she was failing, I was thinking, ministers think, I think I've told this story maybe before, if you've heard it, bear with me, but I was thinking, and ministers probably think this sometimes, that would be a cool, that would be cool to kind of be officiate at her funeral. You know, because I'm thinking that's going to be a massive celebration. There's going to be lot of people there, and it's really going to be fun. Because here was this person with all these kids who love the Lord, husband who loved the Lord, church who loved the Lord, really a nice celebration. So she dies. Well, her daughter, whose name was Lois, Audrey wanted a hymn, "He the Pearly Gates Will Open." She wanted that sung at her funeral in Swedish. Because she was Swedish, and that was on her bucket list of things to do at my funeral. So evidently she wrote out her funeral, like Billy Graham evidently wrote out his funeral. Everybody was going to participate in it. Well, she did the same thing many years ago. And so Lois just kind of randomly, and I say that word advisedly, randomly just, well, let's see, what churches have a Swedish background? Well, I know Trinity over on Trinity Covenant. I know their Swedish background, and Elam Baptist. I know they're Swedish, but well, Elam Free Church, they're Swedish. So she started calling all these churches, just trying to find anybody who sang in Swedish. So she calls here and talks to Jeremy, and Jeremy says, "I think Wendell sings in Swedish." So I get this call from Lois out of the blue. She has no idea that I know her mom. And I get to sing and be part of the celebration at the funeral. I mean, how bizarre is that? "For I know the plans I have for you." And some of them are going to be really cool. They're just going to be like little presents. "I know the plans I have for you." And that's one of my favorite life stories, because it's just so bizarre. And you got to see the Lord's hand in it. And that's the Lord having fun. Don't you think? I mean, that's like, "I'm going to give Wendell this little gift. Watch this unfold." He's telling the angels this. I'm just making this up, of course. But the story is true, and I think that's just the Lord having fun. "I know the plans I have for you." El Faro, totally different story. This is the Ephraim Foundation. The Ephraim Foundation. Hers is one of the sons. His name's Phil, and his wife's name is Nikki. So Phil and Nikki. Phil is he's a businessman. He's an entrepreneur. His last name is Ephraim. He is Jewish. Actually, his dad was Jewish, so his mom wasn't Jewish, so he's not Jewish. But he's got this Jewish name. And his name's Ephraim. He's an entrepreneurial, spirited guy, businessman. He does business in Latin America. He sells these massive, huge coffee grinding machines. So he's down there on business, and he's meeting with this guy. And the guy says, "Hey, this doesn't have anything to do with our work, but I know this guy's got to unload this land. It's on the Caribbean. It's like 30 acres, and he needs to get rid of it, and you'll get a really good price, like for the price of a car. You can buy 30 acres of land on the Caribbean." And Phil says, "Oh, okay, I'll do it." So he buys the land, gets home, and he's thinking, "What were you thinking? This is out in the middle of nowhere on the Caribbean. You can't get to it other than by boat or helicopter. There's, the roads are awful, so you could drive there, but the roads are really bad. So what am I even going to do with it, right?" So I'm not a big fan of putting fleeces out. I just feel like that's kind of pushing God into a corner or something. But anyway, I'm not judging Phil. But he puts this fleece out. He says, "Okay, I'll keep the land if we drill on the land, and at the first drilling, we get what they call sweet water, like water you can just drink. That's my deal." So he gets a drilling crew down there, and they drill. On Christmas Eve, and I'm not making this up, he gets a call on our first hit. We hit Sweetwater. So now he's got to keep the land, right? So he's got 30 acres. Then he got a chance to buy 35 more. He bought 35 more. He's got like 65 acres. And 12 years ago is when they started developing this. He bought it in like 1999, had it for a few years, did some networking, started developing it like 13 years ago. But it was all jungle. There was a little shack and a kind of a crummy pier, and then it was all jungle. And so they cleared a path through there and got some excavators down there and worked with them and got the path cleared. And now, 13 years later, there are over 25 buildings. I walked on the campus, it seemed like it had been there 50 years. It just, you walk on Willow Bay, some of you have been to Camp Willow Bay, a free church camp, and it just feels like it's been there a long time. You walk there and it has that feeling. Even though things are kind of new, it's just a little bit rustic enough. There's thatched, roofed buildings, that kind of thing, and you're like, but they have over 20 ministries that are ongoing year-round. Lois talked about the free cataract surgery. Dr. Dario is his name. He was part of this mission, and he would see people in the few days that we were there, and he would say, well, you need cataracts. If you come to the mission on such and such a date, I'll give you free surgery. And he does free surgery there year-round. It's an amazing thing. He's a Guatemalan national. A lot of the doctors who were there were Guatemalan nationals. The dentists, I think, were all Guatemalan nationalists. And I'll say more about that in a couple minutes. But what a crazy story. You buy land on a whim, and it turns out to be a conference center. Moody Bible Institute goes down there and uses that to train national pastors. There are, if you go on their site, Alfaro, Mission Alfaro, M-I-S-I-O-N, there's not two S's, Alfaro. There it is, Mission Alfaro. There's all these ministries, and you look on their calendar, there's groups going down there all the time. One of the things they did was they built a championship soccer field. Like, why would you do that? Well, they have soccer camps for kids in the area, but there's also a professional team that comes and does their pre-season, like the Bears do their pre-camp. They use that for their pre-season workouts. And I suppose they'll probably pay for that. So, that's one way to produce a little bit of revenue and have a credential that this is a great place. But it's an amazing thing how the Lord works. It's just sometimes so odd. I know the plans I have for you. I know the plans I have for you. And they're pretty spectacular. He doesn't say that. But they're pretty amazing, aren't they? Okay, last story. Last story is on day one, pastor approached me. They had, Lois said they had every evening, there was a devotional. And on day one, pastor asked me to do the devotional on day 4. And I'm like, whatever. No, I didn't say that. I said, okay, I'll do that. And what do you think my passage was that came to mind? I know the plans I have for you, exactly. So I know the plans I have for you. And I was thinking about, my connection with Audrey and just how all this happened, all these connections over a period of 30-some years, right? And they weren't like a constant, steady plan. Like at Christ Hospital, where I worked all these years, oh my word, we were not at a loss for plans. We had a strategic plan. We had a 10-year plan. We had an annual plan. We all had goals and objectives. We met about those goals and objectives. Are you meeting your goals and objectives? Why are you not meeting your goals and objectives? You'd be penalized for not meeting your goals and objectives. I mean, it's just so nice to not have that strategic plan hanging over my head. As a vice president, I was responsible for stuff that I kind of didn't really have a whole lot to do with. And, well, I know the plans I have for you. Different kind of strategic goals here. I don't get to see the plan. Wow, is that ever different? So, but little by little, I get little pieces of it. And so here's a little piece of it. Do a devotional. Okay, that's cool. I'll do that. So, Sunday was their first day. Monday, second day. Tuesday was our third day. And then it was Tuesday night. Do I have this right, Lois? Yes. Tuesday night. When you start your work week on Sunday, you get kind of goofed up, and that's how I was. So kind of all like, now which day is it now? So Tuesday night I wasn't feeling too good. And I was up in the night, not feeling well. And then, so it's Wednesday morning. And the other guy, I was rooming with two doctors and a full-time missionary who lived down there, and me. So wasn't feeling good, and was in the bathroom, and the other guys had left, and I woke up, I was on the floor. And there was kind of like blood around my, face, and I kind of noticed that there was a tooth missing here. And my glasses were, see how the thing across, were like that, had a muff that goes across, scratch. And evidently, I passed out and hit the sink on the way down, which kind of cushioned my fall, if you get the joke there. So I was kind of messed up. And evidently got dehydrated, and so I woke up in a unflattering position, let's just put it that way, and got myself situated, got back into bed. And then one of the doctors comes back to change shirts. I don't know why he was going to change shirts, but he came back, evidently part of the plan. And he said, "How are you doing?" And I'm like, "Well, not really good. Can you check and see if I need stitches in my mouth?" Because my mouth was bleeding. And so he said, "No, you're looking good there." But I said, "Well, I lost a tooth and chipped another one over here." And he says, "Yeah, and you got a bump on your head." And so spoiler alert, I survived. Just, so then, that was the day that the clinic was on site. So they set up all these clinics. The other days, we were out in the middle of nowhere. This day, it was right there at El Faro. It was like 25 steps out my door, and there was the clinic. So all the doctors are there, the nurses are there. They give me an IV, and the IV was great. I was in the bunk bed, and they put a chair up between the bunk beds and hung the IV up there. They were very resourceful. And there were nurses. I had 24-hour nurse service. They were checking on me. They were rounding. If you work in a hospital, you know what that is. They were rounding. They're coming by. How are you? Do you need this? Do you need that? Service was great. And by the way, it was all free. Didn't need my Medicare card. Didn't need my supplemental insurance. Didn't need any of that. I was getting medication. I was like, why don't I just live here? And so they gave me about 5-6 hours of that. Well then, I'm missing a tooth. So they carry me to the dentist. And I'm only going to show Dave, and then he'll have to tell you, but see my 2 front teeth, they weren't affected at all. The one right next to it, how does that look?
You wouldn't know.
Okay.
Yeah, you wouldn't know.
It's perfect. It's better than the old tooth. These dentists were great. So I'm laying on this table, and all of a sudden, my chest is just killing me. I survived, Chris. You don't have to worry.
I know, I'm just thinking
But
what you're thinking.
yeah, then I'm thinking, no. I didn't go through that to have a heart attack. So I said, can I sit up? Can I sit up? So I sit up, and this guy's kind of holding me, and I pass out again. So that's when Lois started praying fervently, praying without ceasing. She probably already was praying, but at this point, because she's seen me pass out. I mean, that's something I do in my life, because I have low blood pressure. It's not like this is foreign ground. I do this. It's like, oh, okay. But, you know, this is a little bit more spectacular. So now, you know, if I had a shred of dignity left at that point, they're holding my legs up in the air. So I'm laying there. I've got my legs up in the air. They're trying to get the blood to my head. And they're taking my sugar, which if you know anything about sugar, it's supposed to be like 100. It was in the 60s. So it was not good. They're pouring packets of sugar in my mouth that I kind of... Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not too worried about the grinding at that point, you know, but, you know, and they're giving me different ways to get my sugar up, and they can't give it to me all at once, because then you spike the other way, and that's bad too. So they're just kind of trying to slowly get my sugar up, get my legs up in the air, and this guy comes up, Steve Ephraim, is a brother of Phil. He comes up, and he's interviewing me with a camera. I know the plans I have for you, Wendell.
Is this on YouTube?
I know the plans I have for you. Oh, my word. So little by little, I'm okay. They let my legs down, thank you very much. And by supper, I was eating soup, and I had a good night's sleep and breakfast the next morning, and I was a tourist that day, going out, and I know the plans I have for you. But what occurred to me in all of that, in the middle of it, is this part of the story. Even though you're kind of a main character in this isn't about you. This isn't about you. This is about, I kept seeing faces of all these people who had become my friends over the first few days. You know, people who were missionaries, people who were volunteers, doctors, nurses. Nurse who lives across the street from us was my main nurse, and she was with me off and on most of the day. She's somebody that we've known for 35 years, right? And people I'd never met before. Patrick, the guy who was a pediatric resident at Christ Hospital, he was there. He was one of my he was the guy who found me, actually. And there were all these people involved. And there were people praying for me, and that was a day that we didn't have as many patients. So, I didn't feel like I was eating up all the resources that could be used on villagers in the other days. And it dawned on me in the middle of it all is that, it's me, but I'm not the main character here. The main character is this whole team of people. It's kind of like how the church works. This is a whole team of people. It's not about me. You give your life to Christ, and the story isn't about you anymore. It's about Christ as the central figure here. Sharing Christ is the central figure here. Building up the church is the central figure here. And he says, I know the plans I have for you. And they're pretty bizarre. They're pretty bizarre. And it's the height of all wisdom not to tell you what they are in advance. Because you'd say, I'm not going to Guatemala. I like my teeth the way they are. That's our stories. What's our time?